Hello, and welcome back to a new episode of the Leading Yourself podcast. Today on the podcast, we are going to be talking about something that I've never talked about here on the podcast. We're going to talk about how to overcome decision fatigue. Did you know that the average person, like you and me, we make about 35 or more thousand decisions every single day? And that the more choices that we make, the harder each choice becomes. We're going to unpack what is decision fatigue. I am going to talk to you about one thing that you can do to minimize your decision fatigue. So not only you can be more productive, but also you can feel more synchronized, more balanced with yourself. And well, you'll find out when you listen to the podcast. Welcome to the Leading Yourself podcast. This is your host, Carolina de Arriba. I'm an HR professional, health and fitness coach, wife, mom, and above all things, a goal-getter. In this podcast, we're going to be digging into all things leadership, professional and career development, habits, and relationships. This is a podcast for those who want to become the best version of themselves. Those who have big dreams and are willing to embrace the journey and put in the work to achieve them. My goal is to share with you the tools, tips, and tricks to help you in your journey. So let's dig into today's episode. Okay, I have a confession to make. I really wanted to do this podcast episode around intuition, because that is my theme for this month. And if you know me, you know that I look at every year as a book with 12 chapters, and each chapter has a theme. And that is the theme that I try to dig into for my own self. And this month is intuition. And I started to do a lot of research around intuition, and I learned a lot, and I discovered a lot, and I was able to connect a lot of dots. But it felt, I don't know, a little bit woo-woo to talk about intuition, to be honest, still not comfortable to me because I am a very logical person. I like data. I like to analyze data and inputs in order to make decisions. But then, like a light bulb went off because, not off, on, because as I was thinking about intuition, I realized that there is a big connection between intuition and decision fatigue. And I thought, well, you might want to learn more about decision fatigue, and it might be a more appealing topic to hear about than intuition. So I'm going to merge the two because there is such a strong connection between these two things. So let's start by understanding what is decision fatigue. Well, decision fatigue is a phenomenon where the more decisions we make, especially throughout the day, the more our cognitive resources are depleted. And as a result, we might find ourselves making poor choices or feeling mentally drained. I don't know if you have ever felt like this, but I do. The later in the day, the worse I am at making decisions. When my kids at nighttime, when it's about to go to bed, ask me about something, I almost feel upset or bothered when they ask me things, especially when those questions require me to make a decision or a choice. Why? Because I am decision fatigued by the end of the day. As a logical, rational person that I am, sometimes to the extreme, I put a lot of energy throughout the day in making decisions. And at the end of the day, I'm really tired. And have you experienced that sometimes you go to bed and you feel really tired and you're like, well, but I didn't do much today. I was just sitting down all day working on my computer. Well, just like your body, imagine or think of your brain as a muscle. it does get tired. The more decisions that you force it to make, the weaker it becomes. And this is where intuition comes into play. Intuition acts as a mental shortcut. It's like a built-in compass that quickly points you in the right direction without the exhaustive mental gymnastics that often accompany a decision-making process. By learning to trust your gut feelings, you can rely on your intuition to guide you through simpler decisions. For example, when choosing what to wear or what to have for lunch, trust what your intuition has a preference for instead of overthinking every single little decision that you make in the day. Because here's the thing, the average human being makes more than 35,000 decisions or choices throughout the day. A lot of them, we don't even realize that we're making a decision. Like I mentioned, what to eat today or what to wear in the morning. By offloading trivial decisions to your intuition, you free up valuable mental energy for more critical choices that require that deep thought and analysis. Imagine a world where you don't need to contemplate every small choice in your day. You're conserving your cognitive resources for the decisions that truly matter, like work related choices, problem solving, or your personal goals. Cultivating your intuition, it's like training a muscle. The more you practice, the stronger it becomes. And I think the only way to get started is by consciously allowing your intuition to weigh in on your everyday choices. This could be as simple as choosing the fastest line at the grocery store or sensing which route to take when driving to work. Over time, your intuition will become more attuned, leading to quicker and more effective decisions. So, today I want to talk a little bit about intuition. That was my intent all along, but I felt I needed to start with this decision fatigue because, to be completely honest, this is something that I have personally been experiencing. I had shared recently in the podcast that I have been overwhelmed and exhausted, and I wanted to intentionally rest and recharge. And I also share up with you the different types of rest and how I was only focusing on my body physical rest. And I was underestimating some of the other types of rest that actually were the things that I needed. And at the root of that was this decision fatigue. That is something that I suffer often because I don't rely enough on my intuition. So this month, I'm really diving into connecting with my intuition and allowing my intuition to weigh in more in the choices that I make throughout the day so I can free up that capacity and reserve those cognitive resources for the most important decisions that I have to make during my day. So let's kick off things around intuition by clarifying what intuition is. Intuition is that inner voice, that gut feeling, that unexplainably sense of knowing that guides us. It's a valuable tool that we all possess. But sometimes, like me, you might struggle to tap into it. Explaining intuition can be difficult because it's largely a feeling and a knowing. It's like trying to describe the color blue. It's not easy to do, but simply put, intuition is an innate inclination or drive towards a particular action or behavior, as opposed to thinking or analyzing. It's a feeling or a sense that you have, and it may cause a gut feeling based on past experience. You probably have heard this brain gut connection. So when we say is a gut feeling, really it's when our gut is connected with our brain and our senses. And by the collection of past experiences and this innate sense that we have this feeling that guides us as a compass. Intuition is your sixth sense. You might have heard that. No, it's not like the movie where you start seeing dead people everywhere. It's your inner knowing, it's your soul's guidance system. That sounds a little bit woo woo, but I don't know another way of explaining intuition. Now, because I am a very logical person, I went to the dictionary. And according to the Oxford New American Dictionary, intuition is the immediate understanding, knowledge, or awareness derived neither from perception nor from reasoning. Let me read that one more time. According to the Oxford New American Dictionary, intuition is the immediate understanding, the knowledge or awareness derived neither from perception nor from reasoning. Now, this isn't to say that you should disregard logic or conscious reasoning. Our analytical brain is important too. I would say very important, if you ask me. But instead, what I'm trying to say is that it's all about finding a balance with bringing many of our cognitive resources into action depending on the situation. All are very useful. However, intuition can provide us with valuable insights into what might be best for us in ways that logic sometimes cannot. As hard as that can sometimes be to accept for someone like me that relays a lot on that logical sense. Sometimes it logically makes sense to do something, but still just doesn't feel right. Have you ever felt like that? Because I have. And as I was researching about intuition, I understood a lot of situations that I have faced in my life where I was paralyzed in analyzing logically a decision, but never arrived to a conclusion that felt right. And that was my intuition trying to say something to me in that situation. And now I understand that that's what was going on. Have you ever experienced something like that before? You know, intuition, I'm learning that has been a topic of research for centuries in many fields like philosophy and psychology. It's really fascinating stuff. I feel like a little kid in Christmas, like reading and learning more about this topic. Whether you call it intuition, listening to your gut, having a hunch, or your inner knowing, we all have the ability to tap into it. And that's the point of today's podcast episode. I want to go deeper into this topic and share with you some ways that you can tap into your intuition. You know, intuition often seems mysterious, but there is a science behind it. Our brains are wired to pick up on subtle cues and patterns that we might not consciously recognize. So, what's happening under the surface when we experience that gut feeling or intuition insight? It's really that our brain has picked up on those subtle cues and patterns, and we haven't even noticed about it. So, I want to share about what are these things, right? So, we talk about this subconscious processing. Our brains are incredible information processors, right? They're more powerful than any computer that man has been able to invent. Even when not consciously aware of it, our minds are constantly collecting and analyzing data from our surroundings. This happens in what we call the subconscious mind. One of the key aspects of intuition is also the pattern recognition. Our brains excel at identifying patterns in data, even if we're not consciously aware. You might be the person that say, this is my strength, I can recognize patterns. Or you might be the person that are like, no, that's not me. But all of us have that ability. This ability is rooted in our evolutionary history. When recognizing patterns in nature, such as identifying potential threats or sources of food, that was crucial for the human race to survive. Intuition is also closely tied to our emotional state. Our emotions can act as powerful messengers, signaling to us when something feels right or wrong. When we experience a gut feeling, it's often a result of our brains processing emotional information and alerting us to pay attention. Back to the examples that I have shared with you before. In some situations, our brains need to make rapid decisions without the luxury of time for conscious thought. In these cases, intuition can step in as a quick, intuitive decision making process. It's like our brain's way of saying, I've seen this pattern before, this is what we should do. As you can see or hear, I've been doing my research on intuition. And of course, I needed to find some science backup information to really help me understand and process how intuition works. But the best way to understand intuition is to look into some examples of intuition at play. Let me give you 4 different examples in 4 different scenarios. 1, medical diagnosis. In the medical field, experienced doctors often rely on their intuition when diagnosing complex cases. They might notice subtle cues in a patient's symptoms or their history that don't fit with the typical diagnosis, but can lead them to consider a different life saving approach. I think if you have a family, relative, or even maybe yourself that has been in this situation, it's hard to explain, right? And you don't know, you're trying to understand how is that the doctor came to that conclusion. Or maybe I watched in the past years ago too many episodes of House. But if you watch that TV show, Dr. House, he is someone who has a really well developed intuition or not. The second example I have is entrepreneurship. Successful entrepreneurs successfully or frequently mentioned how they had an intuitive hunch about a business idea or a market need. This intuition, based on a deep understanding of the market trends and consumer behavior, can lead to groundbreaking innovations. A lot of startups or companies that were like, how did they knew? How is it possible that these companies were created? How did they knew that this was coming? That's that intuition at play. Investing. Seasoned investors might have a gut feeling about a particular stock market, where to invest. This intuition is based on years of studying financial data, recognizing market trends, and understanding the economic patterns. They have this ability, this gut feeling on where to invest that a lot of times is hard for us to understand because we haven't been exposed to all the data and all the trends as they have. They have developed that intuition where they don't need to look at all the data and analyze all the data to know where to invest. And we know there's always chances that things can go wrong. The last example I have for you is parenting. Parents, well, we develop a strong intuition about our children over time. We often sense when something is wrong, even without concrete evidence, based on our deep understanding of our child's behavior and their well being. We have this sixth sense on when things are wrong or off. If you are a parent, you know what I'm talking about. So let's talk about some tips for integrating our intuition into our daily decision making. And I have a few, and I personally have already tried a few of these very consciously, because I have to say that a lot of these things you probably already have tried before without thinking about them as a vehicle to develop your intuition. But I want to share a few that in my research I found and some that I have personally done that now I understand in retrospective, those things have helped me develop my intuition. The first one is a mindful morning routine. We were talking about morning routines recently here on the podcast, but starting your day with a few moments of quiet reflection can be very helpful. Instead of immediately diving into your to do list or your emails, setting that time aside to listen to your inner voice can help develop your intuition. This can be meditation, deep breath exercises, or simply enjoying a cup of coffee or tea while pondering your daily intentions. The second strategy is journaling. Keeping a journal where you're regularly so you can jot down your thoughts, your feelings, and your intuitive hunches. Reflecting on your decisions, the ones that you've made during the day, and how your intuition might have played a role in them. Over time, you'll become more and more aware of your own intuitive patterns. This is one thing that I've been doing recently, and I've been really surprised on how much I use my intuition that I wasn't aware that I was using it. And my goal, to be honest, is to bring my intuition more into the picture every time that I'm making certain choices during the day. So, again, I can reduce or minimize that decision fatigue that I was experiencing recently. The third strategy is some me time, time for solitude. Schedule moments of just time with you for you throughout the day. It might be a short walk or a break during the day at work or even a bathroom break. But use this time to check in with your intuition regarding upcoming decisions or actions. And this one can be hard if you are a very logical decision maker because I'll be honest, I've tried this one. When I have a break thinking ahead of my decisions or my actions and trying to invoke my intuition. And what I end up doing is just rationalizing and thinking of all the data points that I have, because that is my default mode of making decisions. And as I mentioned, it's like a muscle. You need to practice more and more. For me, one thing that is helpful is when I have a situation, I'm like, what would I do? And I jump to the solution immediately without thinking of all the facts, which is not the typical way that I approach decision making. But I've been trying to do that with certain decisions where the risk is low of me maybe not making the right decision or not the optimal choice. Number four is to, on the contrary, avoid rush choices. Try not to rush through decisions. When you're faced with a choice, sometimes what you need, opposite to what I was describing, is to take a breath and pause for a moment and listen to your intuition and trust that initial feeling that arises. Rushing into decisions can draw out your intuition insights. So it's a fine balance, right? It's like, how do I get there? And there might be different ways to get in touch with your intuition. And I think it's a matter of practicing and a lot of times trial and error. Number five is to reflect on past intuitions. So, regularly reflect on past decisions where your intuition played a pivotal role can be very helpful in continue to develop your own intuition and your awareness on how intuition has helped you before. Think about instances when you follow your gut feeling and the outcome was positive. This is just going to reinforce the trust in your own intuition. Number 6 is to create decision space. This basically is to allow yourself the space to make decisions without external pressure. When possible, don't make major decisions or choices on the spot, but give yourself time to let your intuition guide you, especially for significant life decisions. And this is very different than getting trapped in analysis paralysis, right? This is not about putting a table with all the criteria and analyzing all the criteria like I would do, like, for example, on things like buying a car. I remember the last time my husband and I bought a car, we made this huge spreadsheet with all the different cars that we were considering and all our criteria that was important to us. And we were filling out all the data and all the facts that we could collect on each car model. So then we can ponderate which one meet most of our criteria in order to make our decision. That's not what I'm talking about with creating space, right? It's not about creating the spreadsheets and gathering data. It's about getting in touch with your intuition. And I know that can be hard to understand. It's hard for me to explain how that feels differently or looks differently. The only thing I can say is only by practicing, you're going to figure out how to explain it to yourself and really understand and differentiate when you're calling your intuition versus when you're making rational choices. Okay, moving on. Strategy number 7 is to discuss with trusted friends. Sharing your thoughts and your intuition with close and trusted friends or mentors can be another way to get more in touch with your intuition. Your friends, your mentors can provide valuable perspectives and help you validate your feelings. Sometimes discussing your intuition with others can lead to greater clarity. Sometimes we need that validation. And typically, I would tell you that you don't need validation for your own decisions, but this might be the one exception. As you're trying to get more in touch with your intuition, sharing your thoughts, sharing what your intuition is telling you with others can help you validate your intuition, but most importantly, lead to greater clarity. Strategy number 8 is to acknowledge physical sensations. Pay attention to physical sensations that come with that intuitive feeling. Do you experience a sense of ease or tension in your body when you're considering a decision? Recognizing the cues can enhance your intuitive awareness. And in this, I would say that there is a difference between intuition and fear, for example. And I found this research that differentiates the two because I'm like, how do I know that what I'm feeling is my intuition and it's not something else like fear or my logical mind, right? So, on one hand, fear feels more like I should do this or I'm supposed to do this, where intuition feels more like the natural next step to take. Fear feels like unsure and confusing, while intuition feels like truth. Fear also feels like frantic and urgent, while intuition feels calm and patient. Fear or your logical mind feels like force, push, but intuition feels like a gentle pull or whisper. Fear feels like mental chatter or spinning in circles. That happens a lot when you use your logical mind. Like when I do those big spreadsheets to decide what car to buy, I feel like I'm spinning in circles looking at that chart and trying to add some other piece of data, right, to make it more clear. On the other hand, intuition feels like pops or flashes into your awareness, like suddenly. Like all of a sudden, you wake up one morning and you're like, I know exactly what car I want, regardless of what the spreadsheet says. Okay, strategy number 8 is this mindful decision making process. It's important to develop a mindful decision making process that combines both the rational analysis with the intuitive insights. When facing a choice, consider both aspects, the logical aspect, but then tune in with your intuition to see if it aligns. This for me is the better balance that I can find. I can't move away from the logical aspects of my decision making, but I can for sure invite my intuition and ask myself if what my logical mind is telling me aligns with my intuition. And finally, strategy number 10 is to maintain a positive mindset. Keep a positive and open mindset. Optimism can enhance your intuition, as a negative or overly anxious state of mind can cloud your intuition judgment. By incorporating these tips into your daily routine, you can gradually strengthen your intuition and make it a more integral part of your decision making process. That is something that I'm working on, and well, maybe you want to join me. I have a lot more things to share about intuition. I would like to go deeper into strategies that are linked to certain areas of our life, like our careers, for example. But I'm going to leave that for a future episode of the podcast. If you have questions about this topic of intuition or how to apply intuition into a particular area of your life or a particular situation, I would love to hear from you. So I can incorporate all of those things in future episodes of the podcast. With that, I hope that you have an amazing day. I hope that you learned something today, that it opened your mind to consider intuition as a way of reduce your decision fatigue and to help you make better decisions that are more aligned with who you are. If you found this episode helpful, do me a favor and share it with a friend. And with that, I hope you have an amazing week ahead, and I'll see you here next week for another episode of the Leading Yourself podcast.